Okay, 3, 2, 1. We're back in, people, and forget the fourth quarter of this game. Forget the NFL picks. Forget everything else. We've got breaking news live, literally live. We're live on YouTube. We're 3 hours in. It's a good thing we're still going because, it's literally just breaking. And it's a good thing we checked Twitter than when we did. Thank God for Shams, because without Woj, we need somebody to get us this news. We've got an NBA trade in the works, in the process of going down. The New York Knicks are trading Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and potentially some picks to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Karl Anthony Towns. It's happening, people. Towns is going to New York. Randle is out of there. New York's got their big man. And I know we could react to the whole side of this. And don't worry, we're still focused on the game here. Virginia Tech's driving. Tutton just broke a big play. There's so much exciting stuff happening, people. The watch party is cooking. But, again, I know we'll potentially react to the New York side of this in a second here. But, my initial reactions to the Minnesota side of things is the obvious thing you think of when you think of Towns and you think of the whole situation going on with Minnesota is the contract. And Randle has his own contract thing going on, but he's got a player option next year for $30 million. I was just looking at it too after I got the news, because again, this is the first thing I thought of, and I was looking at the contracts. But he's $28 million this year. He's $30 million next year. There's definitely some long-term financial flexibility that you're giving yourself by making this move. But I think if we're talking winning the title for right now, I think this is a step back. And I know Towns is an iffy player. He's up and down, and his downs potentially swung the playoffs, but his ups also swung the playoffs last year. And Anthony Edwards is the franchise guy for Minnesota. He is, the reason that Minnesota is in the position that they are, and he's elevated this team to this status. But Towns is the reason that they won a couple of those playoff games. And Towns' performance against Jokic and against the Nuggets was, the second, I was going to say as equal to Edwards, but, Edwards was his own thing. And at times, Towns was carrying in the way that he needed to carry. But it was the exact second fiddle that they needed next to Edwards if they were going to make a deep playoff run and if they were going to upset a championship team. And it's exactly what they got. And I get the making yourself flexible for those long-term financial possibilities. And maybe there's trade stuff as well, too, that now you're opened up to, and the cap stuff. And we know the aprons and the restrictions that you have there. Maybe you open yourself up to a whole new world of possibilities for this season. But as of right now, they are, I think, a little farther away from winning the title, and they have a title window right now. So if you have Edwards for, we have Edwards for the next decade, whatever, he's the type of guy, maybe the type of superstar that you're just in the mix regardless, and you're going to have a playoff team if Edwards is your best player. And again, with maybe this hypothetical team that they're able to build with this extra cap space, whether or not Randle and DiVincenzo is a great role player. We know that he was incredible for the Knicks, and the fact that there's actually there's more bench minutes for him on Minnesota, and he's actually going to be a valuable part of this team, is a great addition for them. And again, that hypothetical maneuverability is important, but they have a title window right now, and maybe moving Towns was the thing to do at the end of the day, but I think you either needed to commit to this was going to be picks or going to be definitely a player upgrade. And it kind of straddles in a weird, vague, half reset type move. And Randle, I think, is, I don't know if he's even that far off of what Towns can be, but we just haven't seen him, for the ups and downs that Towns have had. Like, we just haven't seen Randall have the big playoff moments. And I do actually think that Towns' offensive upside is a little bit higher than Randall's. Randall's brings a different element to the game with the toughness, and he's also, maybe the playmaking is a little bit higher from him as well, too. You can run some stuff around him. And again, it's a little bit different with him as a point forward. But I think Towns as a second option is a better bet than Randall as a second option. And, they have Dillingham. Like, yeah, that's, Dillingham's maybe a bit of ways away. But, it's a weird team now with Edwards and Randall and Gobert and Mike Conley. And maybe with Edwards taking another step up, it's still overall in the same position. But we'll see what Sam says with this one next time we see him. I'd be super curious. I'm sure we'll get message. I'm sure we'll message about it later. But yeah, I think the Timberwolves, as of right now, when they're currently in a title window, they're pulling that back a little bit for maybe something that I'm not seeing. So maybe we just need to let the whole picture play out. But that's just my very in the moment instant reaction to the trade from the Timberwolves side. And from the Knicks side, we go the other way and go, that's a lot of money to commit to Towns, but they desperately, maybe desperate's not the right word, but especially with Mitchell Robinson going out, they're borderline desperate for a center. And we're talking about Towns as a number 2 option. Towns is like a number 3 option on this team now? You've got Brunson, you've got Bridges. Unfortunately, it cost them a Villanova guy. So I'm sure that hurts. And now that I'm saying that out loud, breaking up the Villanova vibes is not ideal. One of the main reasons about bringing in Bridges that was cool was for that specific reason. That those guys were on the team together. It's unfortunate they never got to see the court. There's going to be like a weird, can you get all of their jerseys on the same team? And wasn't Arcidiacono on the Knicks? I'm pretty sure Arcidiacono had a Knicks run. So you could get all of the Villanova, the Villanova starting 5 basically on the Knicks, but never actually like having played a single minute together. But looking at what the Knicks have here, so they still, Mitchell Robinson, Jericho Sims, obviously. Whoa, and a big third down for Virginia Tech, 3rd and 9, chugging it into the end zone for a touchdown. They're going to go up by 10. Drones is going toe-to-toe with Cam Ward, mainly because Cam Ward has been turning it over like Drones was earlier. I was looking away when this play was developing. Running backwards. Drones across his body. Wow. Cam Ward is going to have to throw the team on his back and be perfect here if Miami has a chance, because that's a back-breaking touchdown. But, yeah, Towns is really a big injection into that Knicks front court. And then OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart. I mean, Towns is their fourth or fifth best player on a given day. And, maybe there's some stuff that Towns needs to work out personality-wise, but I kind of think Towns might be, he might be more chill than some people give him credit for. And if he is now into a role where he can kind of shoot, and you think about Brunson compared to Edwards too. Like, I think Edwards going forward, building a team around him, I think the consensus would be most people would pick Edwards, but Brunson as a point guard, like, that's why I say most people, because even me too. I think at the end of the day, I would panic and pick Anthony Edwards, but when you have the ability like Brunson does to just make teammates better and the playmaking and setting guys up, it's just so invaluable because, it elevates the guys around you. And Anthony Edwards is able to do that with his scoring ability and his impact and the gravity that he has. Obviously, other great players are able to elevate them, the guys around them in that way. But when you can literally get the other players around you good looks and good baskets and get them in positions to be successful, there's just nothing that can really replace that. And Brunson can bring that element a little bit better than Towns can. And Towns and even Brunson, like Brunson can be a post-up guy, whereas Towns wants to be a three-point shooter. So I get, being around the rim, rebounding, there's going to have that toll. But Anunoby and Josh Hart can be rebounders. Like, this is a really good spot for Towns to be in. Like, a really good spot. Especially with Anunoby, too, can, even on certain matchups, like, guard the 5. Like, where you could have Towns on a certain, maybe 4, or hide him on, not that you would hide Towns, but just use him in different ways defensively. And his spacing will be good. I think, again, it's expensive, but the Knicks they're looking to they're creating themselves a title window, and maybe you got to spend to do that. I get you got to a little bit, but it's a tough move. Towns is it's a tough guy to bring in and go. I guess he is a needle mover. Is he a needle mover in the sense of how much? Because he's taking, like we're saying, in the West, I really do think that it is at its peak, it's a bit of a step back for the Timberwolves. But for the Knicks, just because of what Towns' baseline skills, like we're saying, he needs to be the second best guy on that team. So his baseline skills in this Knicks team are more valuable. And then if he's giving you some of that peak stuff, it's really like icing on the cake. This is man, I think the Celtics, you still got to give the Celtics their respect for being the best team. But if we see a couple of big games, I'm ready to buy in on this Knicks team. This is a big move. So, again, shout out to Shams. Just Game of Thrones style, stepping right in and filling the throne, breaking the big news. Woj, I'm sure it eats him up to see somebody else doing it. Powell, our guy APR, back on the sideline, ready to check in the game when they're back on defense. Yeah, he looks ready to go. But my guess is that Woj, you still probably have your phone in the shower. I know everybody was making a big deal of, oh, Woj, what a tough life, the grind. You got to do a lot to get to the top. And that's totally true. I totally agree with all that. It's you definitely got to make a lot of sacrifices. But the phone pressed up against the glass in the shower was the one thing that's like, Woj, it's 2024. Everybody showers with their phone. And why is your phone pressed up against the glass anyways? Your phone should just be propped up in the shower playing a video, and then you just get the notifications as they come in. Am I like, why are you not playing a song or DJing or something? This is how you know Woj is an old man. He just like, well, I'm forced to take my phone in the shower. It's like, no, Woj, what have you been doing this whole time? You could just, the shower is this whole other. Woj, if you need us to take a shower with you, Woj. No, pause. IT, take that. Are we live? Cut that out. We're 3 hours in. Okay, 12 minutes into the fourth and down 10. We're bordering must-score territory. So he has time. I don't know if I didn't see if Powell was checked in the game, but again, the coverage downfield solid, forced to check it down. Can we get an APR sighting? Look for the guy in the backfield chasing the quarterback. And again, positive yards, but nothing down the field. The crowd kind of quiet. Cam Ward off target on a comeback route that should have been there. Chat, is Miami cooked? Powell back in the game, APR. For a big third down, They've got him back on that left side. Just bull rushing the tackle, drives him straight back. Cam Ward, flushed out of the pocket, is able to run for the first down. But, man, we are impressed with Powell. He is definitely becoming a name that we're putting on our draft watch here. I think we said he earned a lookup earlier, and then we never. Oh yeah, we did. He said fifth year. Okay, fifth year guy. That's right. We didn't write it down. Write it down, IT. So we'll remember. Let's see who else we've got in the mix here, because obviously James Pierce is the big, number one edge going into the year. Mason Graham, if we're just talking about overall defensive linemen. Okay, it still looks like Michael Williams from Georgia is at the top of Tankathon. That's right. This is the Abdul Carter year? I forgot about that. I'm big Abdul Carter guy. We got a lot of Abdul Carter stock in the bank. A couple of Ohio State guys. JTT back in the mix. Walter Nolan potentially a little bit later as well too. Former number one overall recruit. So maybe there's room for a guy like Powell. I mean, you lead the league in sacks, and that's not always a guarantee, but it's a good sign for maybe a day two guy. And yet another Virginia Tech player cramping up. So clearly we need to be hydrating more on the sidelines if we're Virginia Tech. Oh, but at the same time, Miami offensive lineman out of breath, down bad. So we didn't get a weather report for this one. It must be humid and muggy, hard to breathe. You see the panting. Just the humid sweats. That humidity sweat is different than anything else. That's just those are just the most brutal conditions to play in. Maybe not the most, but when we're just talking about pure heat. Okay, we need to do a little post reaction to our live reaction. We just finished the recording of the full stream, so if you guys want to check that out, you definitely should. But when we were reacting live, I wasn't necessarily thinking about Naz Reid either and his impact on the Timberwolves. And when you think back to the playoffs, Towns also had big moments, but I mean, Naz Reid basically won them that game 7. And if you think Naz Reid can do the full-time Towns role, which, I mean, I totally think that I think that he can give you that degree of what Towns was giving you most of the time. Maybe he doesn't get to the peaks, which still I think stands for what we were saying is peak Towns is the best player in this sphere of guys that matter that we're talking about here. Obviously, we're taking the main guys out that really aren't in the trade and in the rotations being affected by this trade or whatever, center positions and the wings on the Timberwolves and yada, yada, yada. Like, Naz Reid with the shooting and with the defensive energy that he was giving him as well, too, was more than Towns. So if it's Naz Reid and Gobert and Edwards and Conley and, you're kind of running back that same thing, but Randall is now off the bench in the Town spot and it's cheaper and you get that long-term cap flexibility. Okay, now the move, I can see the layout for it a little bit more, but I do think what I was saying still is, and maybe just in the moment we're not too far removed, and maybe we'll come around and I'll say I'm totally wrong, but again, I think the upside of what Towns was bringing to your team, taking that away is a little bit less for winning the titles. So I don't think I'm necessarily totally off of me. I'm not totally not thinking that a couple minutes removed from the live reactions, but I do see the vision for the cap space with the Naz Reid contract and with the Naz Reid minutes growing as well too. And maybe you get into a similar spot that the Knicks were in with Randall with the minutes part of it and the how do you fit him on the court with your best players? How do you work him into the lineup properly and all that stuff? But if you're getting out of his contract sooner and he's cheaper now, and you're already going to have those questions maybe with Towns if Nasri continues to get better, maybe it's better to just have the problem over with sooner than later. So maybe not as dramatic as we were saying in the moment, but we're live. Like, we're figuring this stuff out as we go. So check out the full stream if you haven't. Stay tuned. Follow us at Rem and Sam, at Rem and Sam Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple, whatever platform you guys can think of. We're on there at Rem and Sam Podcast or just at Rem and Sam. But check us out and stay tuned for the next stream.